Hello, my name's Pheobe McLaughlin. I'm a product owner at Hark. My background is in customer service and a lot in ed tech. And Hark, which I will explain in a second, but we're an IoT company, which I do not expect you to know what that means. But my department and Marc, who will introduce himself in a second, work very, very close together. So we decided to do this as a duo to kind of show the powers of the team. And also why product and user experience should absolutely be intertwined.
Thank you. So I'm Marc. Obviously got a little bit less hair than the photo. But I'm the lead UI UX designer at Hark. So I predominantly design the dashboards that people use. Obviously Phoebe's going to go into kind of what Hark do. But essentially we allow people to monitor, control and view their energy usage. So yeah, my job is to make that look pretty, understand it first and foremost, and then make it usable. My background is a bit of a mixed bag, so B2B, commerce, agency world, where I met Andy, and now IoT.
So, why are we here? So everybody's talks today have been incredible, and I feel like it gives us a lot of hope and thought into what we do. We at Hark, we're in kind of a scale-up phase, and it's an IoT company, which is Internet of Things, and the idea being that we connect industrial assets, so that's things like fridges and AC units and big machines and tills and ovens and all this other stuff, right? And we take all that data and we aggregate it up, and we use an intuitive platform, can't speak, to show people that data, right? Because it's similar veins, kind of what other people have said, the power of data. And it challenges companies to be more sustainable, so it helps them become more efficient, to maximize their yield, to reduce their waste, and initially just make better decisions and hopefully become more green and sustainable. So, why this is important is for our examples, which we'll see in a second. So we are here to do the opposite of what everyone here has told you, basically. Just take everything you've learned, and we didn't do most of that because we just didn't. So we will go into an example of where we went wrong, and hopefully for people who are new to UX or new to product or the kind of general vein, will learn from our mistakes and don't do what we did. And then we will show you how we fixed it and how we did the next project a lot better. For caveat, the first project didn't include UX or product, so we weren't involved. And also, we have changed the companies, changed the industries to protect the innocent. So these are just examples, but the scenarios are very, very similar. So, go. There we go.
So, our first client, Keithley Fried Chicken. Fortunately for me, my CEO isn't here today, but if he sees this, I'm probably going to be packing my desk tomorrow. But yeah, Keithley Fried Chicken is a well-known fast food outlet. They have a number of stores, and they came to us because their objective was they have a number of assets that they want to monitor. So imagine a fast food outlet. They've got fryers, they've got ovens, they've got lighting. They want to know where that usage is being used, obviously, where it's been utilised. So yeah, they came to us to come up with a solution on how they can best see their energy usage over a period of time. I'm going to hand over to Phoebe now to kind of explain where we went wrong. Not necessarily a bad thing, because we can take learnings from it, but absolutely crucial to, I guess, understand where you went wrong to start with. So yeah, over to you, Phoebe.
Okay, so what did we do? So we obviously got the project, and obviously before this was the whole preamble of contracts and the negotiation and the handover of everything, right? So we, for argument's sake, we come in at this point. So what we did is we initially had a workshop, right? Makes sense. We sat down with our users and the client, namely, and we said, right, what do you want from this? And they kind of told us, and we had a discussion, and we thought, great, okay, that makes sense. And of course, we heavily lent on our own bias because, who doesn't love popcorn chicken? So we assumed way too much. We assumed a lot. We kind of like, yeah, okay, so there's KFC drive-thrus, and you know there's different sizes, and okay, yeah, it'll be fine. And then we basically ran with it. So we had our details. We knew what we wanted. We had our brief. We kind of felt prepared. And the brains that we had in the room during this discussion was like, you know, some of the most intelligent people in the business. These are like, you know, our top tech people who know everything about the industry, who know everything about our tech. And they went in guns a-blazing, ready to build this, ready to please clients. The client. So we started building. And we built. And we built. And we built. And we built. And then all of a sudden we thought, oh, wait, who's our user? Oh no. And by this point, we dug a hole. And we never validated these assumptions, right? Because we're sitting there going, you know, we eat KFC, we get it, we go to their drive-thrus. But what we didn't think about was there are, for example, like standalone franchises. There are some maybe in supermarkets or shopping malls, some drive-thrus, some not. They had some that were walk-in only, and there was so many different layers. And the other aspects was like, you know, some were using energy of the whole factory or the whole site, and then there was like the factories and the stores. And there was basically so many things we didn't take into consideration that when it came down to it, and we said, ta-da, they went, oh, cool. And we were terrified because it worked. Don't get me wrong, like it did what it needed to do for the people who sat in the original room in the original meeting, right? For them, they were like, yep, cool, does what we need it to. But for, you know, the energy manager of the warehouse where they're kind of mass producing stuff, they're like, well, I don't care about that stat. That doesn't make any difference to me. Like, you know, we're here producing 24 hours a day. Like, I don't care what our opening hour time is. Like, it makes no difference. So we didn't take into consideration all this information. And basically what it boiled down to is we had a product which was just a bit naff. And don't get me wrong, we're iterating on it. We have learned from our mistakes. And essentially what we realized is we, as kind of people have said throughout the day, we forgot who our end users were. Like, we knew who our client was, we knew who our industry was, we knew all that kind of stuff, but we didn't think of everybody. So, you know, the factories, the shop workers, everybody who would be contributing to this, and what we made just, it wasn't quite fit for purpose. So don't do that. Don't do what we did. Another issue that we did is we were really, really technical, really technically focused, like from day one. We walked in, we didn't really have any user research, we didn't really have kind of that product vision in mind. We just came in and we went, yep, we get your problem, let's go. And I was delighted when I saw the breadth before depth on your slide, because I jump up and down about that all the time. And I'm constantly just saying to people, like, you need to come up like your way to in the details. We haven't even decided on the objective or the vision. Like, you're coming in saying, you know, what APIs you're going to use and, you know, what frameworks. And I'm like, no, come higher. So that is definitely something that we learned. And going in, there is a process, and it's great having those ideas in your head and understanding what frameworks you want to do and you know, kind of working that through, but you can't go in with that, which is what we did. We also assumed that our users were way more technically adept than they were, which is kind of a similar problem that other people have said, but essentially, you know, these are people who might have owned a franchise for ages, or they might have, you know, worked in fast food, but maybe don't necessarily understand energy. And all of a sudden the company's saying to them, you know, you need to understand your energy usage and you need to lower it by X amount by this date. And they're kind of logging in going, where's my meter? Like, what's a kilowatt hour? You know, we were assuming that these people understood the sector as we understand it, but they didn't. Which is another problem when you're trying to, you know, roll out projects to like multiple sites, multiple people, and as the supplier of that product, we weren't there to help with that. It was kind of like we flew it over to the client, we got their signature, they okayed it, and then it kind of went out, and that wasn't until we started seeing the problems roll in of them saying, well, what about this and what about this? And, you know, it's a great learning experience, and we have learned a ton from it, and we are getting some really valuable feedback. But the time, money and effort wasted, if we just would have shifted left and done all of that sooner, would have been way, way better.
Just to add, from a design perspective, I designed this UI, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, but if I could turn back time, one of the things I would have done is just ask more questions. So as Phoebe highlighted, from a technical perspective, we knew how we was going to architect it, and that detail was kind of documented, and it was partly fed back throughout the business, but I'm not necessarily a technical person, so my understanding was limited. And I think if I could go back and do that project again, it would be just ask those questions. Like, fear, I guess, of delaying the project, I think is probably one of the issues. But actually, over the, I guess, long-term vision of the project, if you'd have asked those questions, the end result would have been so much better for it. And that time that we ended up having to put in at the end of the project to make up for our, I guess, not misdoings, but wrongdoings, I guess, would have been better utilised up front. So, yeah, I think just ask questions and make sure you understand stuff. Like, I don't need to be the technical expert in that field, but I need to have an understanding of what it is in order to design appropriately for it. So yeah, as Phoebe mentioned, the project worked, and I think the other challenge we had really was we are a small business, we've got limited resource, and I'm sure you all feel that challenge. So we're wearing many hats. So we have people in the room, so our CEO is often involved in the sales, but he's wearing many hats as well, and he's trying to, you know, pass that feedback from those initial sales or discovery calls back to the business, and we're getting better at it, utilising channels such as obviously Teams or Confluence pages. But I think that's just one thing to take away really is just being able to capture feedback, and that's kind of throughout the project as well. So things move, things change, and that might impact what your deliverable is going to be. And if you're not involved in that discussion, then you might not be aware of it. But it's really important for people to share that, again, whether it's on a Teams channel or just a quick informal catch-up. So yeah, we learned a hell of a lot from that project, but we're going to move on to a project that went really well, based on our learnings.
So upon reflection of this project, we pulled out a load of stuff, and you know, we did a retro, and some really, really fantastic voice came out. And we basically kind of went back to the drawing board of a design process, really, and we applied it to our next customer, which was Selfridges, the incredibly well-known retailer who sells fridges and has an excellent cafe where you can use the fridges, you know, and get the food. So they came to us, and they basically said they want to know the energy usage of their warehouses in comparison with their warehouses where they have fridge showrooms, right? So we kind of looked at this and we said, aha, we're going to ask more questions this time. So we did. She says, there we go.
Awesome. So, yeah, now we have the opportunity to obviously be involved in those initial discussions. So obviously there was the sales calls, there was early discovery calls, but as soon as we could, we had the opportunity to get with the client, which, as the person who's going to be designing the system, is crucial. Sometimes there may be discussions that not necessarily impact what I'm going to deliver, but it's useful for context. So yeah, just being kind of involved at an early stage is crucial. So as Phoebe mentioned, we hold project retros to understand kind of where we went wrong, which is it's obviously what we did with Keithley Fried Chicken. To turn it on its head, and I think it was mentioned in one of the earlier talks, like, processes are fantastic, but don't be afraid to kind of change it and see what works. So that's exactly what we did with this client. So The first thing we did was a series of interactive workshops, and one of the exercises we did as part of that workshop was basically validating assumptions. So, as I mentioned, from those earlier calls and sales calls and discoveries, we had a lot of information that we internally felt, yeah, we know that that's the case, this is what we need to deliver. But shall we just sense check it with the client? So we did a little game of true or false. So we gave everyone a card, true or false, wrote on either side. We shared a statement on screen, so say for example, for self-fridges, it could be, we want our fridges to turn off at 6 PM when the showroom's closed in order to save energy. We put our card up, say true, that's our understanding. Everyone partaking in the workshop puts their card up, and if they say true, great, because you've got it nailed, we're right, our assumptions are correct. However, if someone shows a false card, whether that's one person, two people or three people, that then is a basis of discussion. So you can start talking about, okay, so why are we incorrect? What's wrong? And that way, it just allows us to get a better understanding. Obviously, we document those discussions, and then it's something we can share, and we can move further forward with our other activities. So again, we've seen it on slides earlier. Affinity mapping sessions where we get kind of natural groupings. So we did that, which was a really useful exercise. We also did some user processes within the session, so with the various stakeholders in the room. Really quick, get on an A-board, sketch some stuff out. Just allowed us to kind of get that insight there and then, take it away and develop them further. All this is kind of, I guess, really, really useful. And I think for us, or certainly for me and Phoebe, it was a bit of an opportunity actually to go back to the business and go, this is the value we're adding by carrying out these exercises. As I mentioned earlier, I guess it's often perceived that by doing this UX research, it's going to be expensive and it's going to take time. Okay, yeah, we had a workshop. It was kind of a full day exercise, maybe half a day to write it up. But if you look at it in the scale of the project, where in the previous example where we've gone wrong, we've designed, we've developed something, we've delivered it, and then we've got to go back and change it. So not only does the designer have to change it, or we even have to go back to an earlier stage and do more research, we have to redevelop it and ship it. So that's going to take a damn sight longer than the time we've invested in that user research. So yeah, other exercises we did were site maps as well, and just kind of general information architecture to understand their hierarchy of their estate. So that was kind of one really useful exercise. The other one was we went to a workshop where I actually bumped my car on the way there, which was really annoying. But at the end of the day, I was happy again because it was a really successful workshop. So myself and Phoebe sat with users and just got to see kind of their working environment, understand what it is they do on a day-to-day basis, floating from one spreadsheet to another, cursing, you name it. And we got to see that emotional side of it and understand kind of just how frustrating it was. And that, again, just kind of all helps towards that, getting in the mindset of the user and understanding, okay, this is who we're designing for, which was obviously missing on that last project. From that, we then kind of jumped on to some low fidelity wireframes. We opted to do low fidelity purely because, I guess, time efficiency, and not get bogged down in the detail. So, you know, not worrying like what this word says or this sentence says or what shade of blue this is. It was just to, right, this is the information we're presenting in terms of structure and layout, make sure they're happy with that, and then move that iterative design process and start adding more fidelity. The thing about the workshop, actually, which I forgot to mention, was the client absolutely loved it. And we was a little bit, I wouldn't say underprepared, we were probably overprepared, to be fair. But we was a bit kind of unsure how it was going to go with the client, because we didn't necessarily know kind of how they'd be, how up for it, I guess they would be, how involved they would be. But we arrived, post-it notes, A4 paper, pens, sweets, and they absolutely loved it. The feedback we got was amazing. And I think, again, from my perspective and Phoebe's perspective, like Hark as a business loved it because they could see what value we brought during that session. So that's kind of, one of the challenges we've got is kind of wearing these many hats and kind of almost fighting for the time to do it, but getting buy-in, I guess, effectively from the business. Another point that I forgot to mention was from those sessions, what we did do is use Moscow. So we obviously had a list of musts. So say, for example, we want to see energy usage over a period of time, and we want to see kind of the peak time usage, so red, amber, green in terms of energy usage. But then you could have a could, which is we could turn off our fridges at 6 p.m. and save energy. Sorry, got that wrong. We could overlay weather data and see kind of how energy usage or energy consumption changes based on the weather. So say, for example, in summer when temperatures are warmer, fridges are having to work harder. So that was a could, but what we had to do is make sure we had a prioritised list of deliverables and work out what we must deliver for this project, which allowed us to kind of, as I say, make much clearer wireframes and kind of get to the point of delivery much quicker. So yeah, we got to work, and kind of one of the things that we do regular is just have a feedback with a client. Like, it can be as formal or as informal as you want, but just being able to speak to a client and go, hey, we've done this, what do you think to this? Or, hey, is this structure correct? Just check in. Like, check in as soon as you can. It doesn't matter about the quality as much. It doesn't have to look pixel perfect. Just get something in front of them, get feedback and change it. And as I mentioned earlier, just make sure any discussion that you have is kind of captured and shared so everyone's up to speed. And yeah, I think, I guess what we did right was we never forgot the user in this case. Whether that was, as I say, an energy manager, facilities manager, someone in admin, just always think about what they're going to use the platform for.
Yeah, I think to back onto that, obviously this is a piece that we've done specifically for Selfridges, but we, as a business, we need our products to be viable across any clients and make money on it in the future and stuff. So as much as we were kind of saying, like, wait, who's our user? We also had to challenge ourselves and think, who else can use this? So we were thinking of other industries and other areas that can use the same kind of terminology. And when we were having this feedback loop with the client, we weren't phrasing it as like, this is yours. We were phrasing it of like, this is how we're going to do it. Does it fit your use case? And the slight difference being that even though they were helping fund this and it was made for them, it wasn't theirs. They weren't going to, buy it, keep it forever. It was our product. So it's important when you're doing this as well to think about terminology, and in that feedback loop kind of keep saying, we are doing this, we're a partnership, we're doing this together, and making sure that even though they are the user, they are the client, they're the end users, we are also clients and users because we're going to use this for other people. Also a little tip, if you're going to do infinity mapping, bring loads of different colours of sticky notes. And what I did, which was so helpful afterwards, was that I gave all internal Hark people, I gave us pastel covered sticky notes and I gave the client neon coloured sticky notes, because then when you took a picture of it on the wall, you could almost pull out the bias of us. So we were still involved and stuff, but you could kind of take those ones with a pinch of salt, whereas the actual true opinion of the clients was way more obvious and you didn't have to kind of sift through it. That saved me loads of time writing up notes afterwards. So a little tip for you. So key takeaways. Do you want to do this? Do you want me to do it? I don't mind.
Go ahead.
Okay. So key takeaways. Everything we initially told you we did, don't do that. Save yourself some money and time. The first thing I'd say is, like, it is totally normal to have an assumption. You know, you are a user of a product. You know, if you work at a bank, you might have your own bank account and you might use that app and you might have a bias on your own app, and that's fine. Just make sure that you validate it through user research, through conversations with other people, and don't assume that you're right. You might not be wrong, but just, you know, keep that in mind. If you have an assumption, validate it. Secondly, frequent check-in points. So it's good to have these established, but you can have them a little bit more like conversational. So we actually work in Kanban, but we speak to our clients almost in sprints, which works pretty well. And some weeks it's literally just, this is kind of the back-end architecture we're making, or other times it's like, here's like, you know, this button. So it kind of depends, but it's great because they feel involved too. It gets them in the conversation. It does feel like more of a partnership, more than like a, you know, you're just kind of batting something over the net and hoping that they see it, catch it, and give you feedback. Interactivity, engaging activities. So some of the stuff that Marc mentioned, the true or false game, affinity mapping, you know, creating personas with them, like getting them to evaluate their own selves, because you can challenge people, right? So like when they're doing something and you see them start tapping on the desk, you're like, are you frustrated? What's that? And they're like, oh, I don't know, like it just takes forever. And you're like, oh, okay. And it's kind of, the power of sitting with someone is so great. And the fact that like the world's opening up again is so exciting when it comes to like UX and user research, because you learn so much by just watching someone live their lives, and you can just kind of become a bit of a fly on the wall. And the information we took back from those exercises was game-changing for how we actually designed it in the end. Similarly, map out their processes. Anybody who's dealt with like a client or a client project knows that clients think they know what they do. They don't always know what they do. So it's great to kind of be like, oh, do you have a process map? Do you have a user flow? And they kind of go, no, why? And you're like, well, how do you know what to improve if you don't know what's inefficient? So you can kind of sit down with them and work it out, and it turns out that like, you know, 5 people are doing it this way and 3 people are doing it this way, and this person's way is way faster. So it's like, well, surely we should base it off the way they do it. And it's kind of opens these conversations to people to kind of challenge their own thinking and think, you know, is the way we do it the best way? Are there other ways, you know? And the more you kind of do UX and the more that you kind of do product, you kind of get a feel for stuff and you can challenge people more. And, you know, thankfully, Selfridges were wonderful. And they basically said to us, you're the experts. You tell us what you want to do, and like we'll see if it kind of fits in with what we need to do. And like it's been great, because we kind of say, well, we understand your processes, we understand your users, we've been to see you, we've met everybody, we know stuff, we think this is it. Like, is this okay? And they've every time been like, yeah, that was great, thank you. And it makes such a difference. Also, work collaboratively with all functions. So that's internally, externally. We work incredibly close together. On the first project, not so much. No fault of our own, love you really. No. But it's really important, and I think people kind of forget in a project, like you're all working towards the same goal, the same objective, and if you're not, then you need to realign that objective. If there's somebody who's fighting you, you need to understand why, and it might be budgetary or time or whatever, and that's fine, but if you can dig into the detail of why they're, you know, either whether it's a client and they're not happy, or whether it's a key stakeholder in your business or in their business, dig into why. You might find out it literally has nothing to do with that and they're having problems at home or so. Just make sure that you work collaboratively, everybody feels involved, and you have really good communication. And last but not least, ask questions. The 5 whys, love that guy. There's no question too stupid. I ask them all the time. And you know, we were talking earlier, and we went into Selfridges, and we basically said to them, pretend we know nothing about fridges. Pretend we've never seen a fridge in our life. You know, we've never been to IKEA. We don't know. So they said, okay, well, fridges typically have 2 doors. And we'd say, do they always have 2 doors? And they say, well, no, sometimes they have 3 doors, or sometimes they have 1 door, sometimes and you know, don't don't let your assumptions do that, and ask questions. And as much as they laughed at us for asking like some really stupid questions, like first of all, it makes people laugh, so like it's kind of good to break the ice. But also, you really can pull out stuff, because it turned out, that 60% of their fridges were, the 3-door one with the thing and the pull-out thing, and they were actually way more efficient energy-wise, like that kind of thing, which you can pull out. So ask questions, don't follow our mistakes, and
That's it.
we're done.